My name's John Bartolomeo. Everybody calls me Johnny Bart. This is my YouTube channel. Hang out, get educated about prison without going to prison. So, everybody wanted to know, right, how Natalie was doing. Where's Natalie? So, we'll start this one off talking about Natalie, and we're going to get into something else that we talked about in the last podcast, too, that people had a lot of questions about and really don't understand basically how it works, which is really the criminal laws in this country. And I'm going to explain a little bit about that, and that's going to be the topic of the conversation today, is about misconceptions about criminal laws. And I had told you that the pendulum has definitely started moving in favor of, the person fighting crimes, not the person that's fighting against them. So, in other words, not moving toward the police, but moving toward the opposition of the state and of the federal government. And that's you, the defendant, unless obviously, even if you're an officer of the law, you're still on that side, because the government is, when it says the United States of America versus you, it's a pretty disheartening feeling to see that. It's the whole government against you. But anyway, how's Natalie? Natalie's great. Natalie's living in South Philly, doing the same thing. I spoke with her actually a few days after I made the video and before the video had come out. And we just talked for a little while, and she wants to come on and, talk, and I'd love to have her on, and maybe we're going to do that. But Natalie's fine. Natalie's good. Natalie's doing awesome. She's living in Philly. Where is she now? South Philly. Anyway, getting back to today's episode, I did a reel and I put it on Instagram, and I had a lot of action on it about how did you win an issue but not get time cut. So there has been instances, I'm going to get into it, but there has been instances where people have went back to court to challenge an issue, and I'm going to tell you how difficult it is to get back into court sometimes. People have challenged issues. I know people personally that have challenged issues, went back to court, won the issue, got resentenced, you ready for this? And got more time. How the hell does that happen? More time, and you win the issue. Yeah, because a judge has wide-ranging discretion. Doesn't happen all the time, right? It's not like it's every day when people go back, oh, man, they're going to give me. Usually the standard operation of procedure is you win your issue that you challenged, or you lose it and you get the same time, right? But you win your issue, you go back, they resentence you, and you get less time. 90% of the time, that's how it happens. But I'm just telling you, there are instances where people have got more time. And I know people have got more time. And I'm not going to mention their names because I'm not really at liberty to mention their names. I don't really know them that well, but I remember their situations. And, when I had mentioned last week in that clip about that it's hard to go back to court, people have this conception that you could just challenge your sentence at any time and go back to court. Doesn't work that way. And they had this law in 1996, I believe, the anti-death penalty. That's what everybody knows it as, the death penalty, the truth and death penalty sentencing, or whatever it was, is that after the conclusion of your case, after 1 year passes, you can never challenge it again. It's the truth. So when I say that I had to challenge it collaterally on a 2255, that's a motion that you submit to the appeals court. I had to get permission from the appeals court to just appeal my sentence. And that was the hardest part of it, was actually, can I have permission to challenge my case because I'm not a career offender no more? And that took a little while. And there was a judge against actually letting me. It's been too long. Let it stand. So when I say that I got permission to file a 2255, I had to petition the appeals court, the First Circuit Court of Appeals in Massachusetts, in Boston, to say, hey, I'm no longer a career offender. Can I please challenge that issue in the district court? Yeah. Crazy. Because what you should be able to do is, listen, the law has changed. I was no longer a career offender. But I still had to get permission from the appeals court. Why? Because my case, the conclusion, the final disposition of my case was past the 1 year mark. And that's the law passed in 96, that once your case is 1 year old, then you need permission, whether it be newly discovered evidence, whether it be change in law, change in circumstances. They give you some guidelines, but it's the craziest thing in the whole world. You should just be able to challenge your sentence at any time. But what had happened over the years is that the federal courts, they say, right, were inundated with requests and, frivolous lawsuits, frivolous challenges that didn't amount to anything. And judges were actually, so crazy busy trying to handle this whole caseload that they had to make parameters that you can only challenge certain parts of your case after you receive permission from the appeals court. And that's the way they figure they remedied it. But another part to my case was that I was given just an upward departure for the violence in my case, for the murder and the attempted murder. I was never indicted. That's another misconception that everybody has, is that, there's only one standard of proof, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not. There's other standards of proof as well. And the one that I didn't get convicted of it, I didn't even get indicted for it. It was a sentence enhancement. That's all it was a sentencing enhancement. My acts of violence wasn't things that I was indicted for, wasn't things that I found guilty for. It was a judge saying, not beyond a reasonable doubt, it was a judge saying that due to a preponderance of the evidence, he believed that I was responsible for this stuff. And I tell everybody the story that our good friend Gigi got found not guilty in a trial, and they gave him time in the same sentencing standard, a preponderance of the evidence. A judge said, I believe you were responsible for an attempted murder, and I'm giving you more time, after he got found not guilty. Facts. So these are some of the misconceptions that people have, that you could just, file anything at any time. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It has to be a jury. Has to be a judge. It's not. Long as they find you guilty of one thing at sentencing, they have wide-ranging discretion of what a judge can do. Now, I tell you all the time that, the pendulum's swinging in our way, but there are laws that have been used to prohibit people from challenging their convictions. And it happens every day. And I've seen people get letters back from the court, don't challenge this no more. You're prohibited. We're going to start sanctioning you from the court. And I mean, the number one, because in Scandinavian countries, you're always allowed to fight for your freedom. The craziest thing I've learned about Denmark is that if you escape from a jail in the United States, you could be charged with escape, right? Any kind of crimes that you've committed while on the escape, robbing somebody, doing something, you could be charged with that. You could be given 35 life sentences, right? But in Denmark and Scandinavia, they can't indict you for trying to escape. It's not a crime, because everybody should fight for their liberty. And everybody has a right to be free, so it's not a crime to try to escape from jail. How crazy is that? Yeah, when I learned that, And, the laws are so much different in those European countries, like, especially like the prisons. I would be getting letters and cards from my guys that were overseas, and they'd be like, yeah, I met my visit at the door. I'm going to college. They were attending college. They did correspondence courses 1 year, then they actually attended the university. Facts. And this is, I'm getting direct letters, seeing pictures, seeing everybody, it's very, very liberal laws insofar as prisoners. I know a guy that brutally murdered somebody there, and the most time he could receive was 15 years for a murder. That was the most time they could give you. Anything else was a violation of human rights, or, the same thing with the escape. If it's, you have a right to be free. So if you try to escape, that's, it's one of your unalienable rights, I guess, in Scandinavia and Sweden and Denmark and places like that. So just a very interesting fact of how different, the laws are there compared to how the laws are here. Now, in other countries like Australia and Canada, draconian. Everybody thinks that Canada is, such a great country. Not for anybody that's committed a crime. You can't even, if you went to Canada today and you got a felony, they can hold you like indefinitely, I think. I don't know, it never happened. I'm not sure about exactly the laws, but you're a terrorist. They can say whatever they want. Australia, the same way. Australia, they don't even allow certain people to associate, even just to be together, because they belong to different organizations. So very draconian laws, just opposite ends of the pole, right? On the polar opposite. So you have like really, we're somewhere in the middle in the United States, but I just always thought it was such an odd fact that they set a time limit of when you can challenge your sentence. And I know firsthand from going through the process that I went through, in such the long, arduous process, going back and forth, papers, motions. It took 2 years for my issue to get adjudicated. And when it finally did get adjudicated and I had lost the issue, after winning it, after the judge saying, well, it doesn't affect the length of your sentence. And, I'm not saying it as, I don't see the judge's point, because I could see how, like, my sentencing scheme was, and, I was given the upward departure for the murder and the attempted murder, and she could have interpreted it like that. But what she did have, it was Judge Raya Zobel. What she did have was an opportunity that if she wanted to give me early release, she could have. And I think I did, where was I, in school kill camp at the time? I don't know, probably 7 more years of prison after that. I'm just thinking off the top of my head real quick. So, it was 7 more years, God knows. I could have, who knows, anything could have happened. But she had the opportunity to do something if she wanted to. But she didn't, and that's the moral of the story. And that's why being a judge, one of my dear friends is a judge, and I love him to death, and he's a state judge. And we're talking about the federal system here. But being a judge is leaves you with the ability to give you wide-ranging deference of what you can and can't do, because there's a lot of things that are discretionary. And, and what the guidelines did, in the federal guidelines, is they try to do away with too much discretion. They try to make fit everybody into a box. So if you had 5 kilograms of cocaine, you were doing a 5-year mandatory minimum. Your guidelines were between 5 years to 7 years or 5 years to 10 years. Then there was enhancements. You could do life. And it basically turned into the same animal with more draconian sentences. That's what the guidelines did. And those were in 1986, I believe they started the guidelines. But as I had told you before, I have a friend of mine that did a lot of time in prison. He's very active in prison reform. His name's Adam Clausen. He does a lot. We're trying to get Kevin McTaggart out, and he's a member of the Sentencing Commission right now, which is the most insane thing I even would say. I would never believe it if somebody else told me that, but I know it. And he's very active, and he's trying to make a difference, because what do we have now? We have the opinion of somebody on that panel and the experiences of somebody that's actually been in prison. And if you were to know Adam, he is like a clean-cut guy. He's got a family. He's a family man. He was a wild kid that has completely changed his life around, and he's not even the same person. So he is the perfect person to have on that panel. And I just think there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of it, and hopefully we can help our friend Kevin McTaggart get out of prison, because he's a guy that he's almost about 70 years old, and the only crime he's ever going to commit is maybe, oversleeping in the morning now. That's, so he's not doing anything. I mean, people change after time, you know what I mean? And I guess for the families of people that, had harm happen to their loved ones, I can see their side of the story, of course. I just put myself in their shoes and say, if somebody was, guilty of killing somebody I loved, and I never knew nothing about this side of the tracks, I would be like, keep them in jail forever, murder them. I guess I would have that opinion too, you know what I'm saying? So, but I just think in the middle of all this, there's always so much bureaucracy, and I don't know if there is a solution to it, but I just think, like anything else, and like I say all the time, is the pendulum just keeps going one way, then another way, one way and another way. So hopefully now, where we are finding ways to have people from all different sides of the tracks, not just lawmakers, right? Because we need more than lawmakers, because lawmakers have one perspective, and, people from all walks of life have all different types of perspectives. So I think that's going to have a positive impact on this. I don't know if anything will change insofar as the law, because lawmakers make the laws, but with the sentencing, with the guidelines and the enhancements, that's a separate thing. It's codified in law, of course, but the guidelines are a certain thing, and that's the Sentencing Commission that Adam is on. But the laws that I had talked about, like you have 1 year, the Anti-Death Penalty, or the Effective Death Penalty Act. That's what it was, Effective Death Penalty Act in 1996, I believe. But you have 1 year from the conclusion of your sentence to challenge it on, collaterally challenge your sentence. That's basically what the law says. So I won, but I still lost. Because why? Because federal judges have wide-ranging discretion of what they could do. And, I'm sure judges will tell you that they really don't, because sometimes their hands are tied, and I'm sure they see it from that perspective. But in this case, she had a lot of deference. She could have definitely did something for me, but I won, still lost, and that's possible. You could be found guilty of having one bullet, get sentenced to 5 years for the bullet, and get a life sentence on top of it because a judge said that you were guilty of other things. He's not going to make stuff up. He's going to understand that, I'm not saying that federal judges would be like, oh, you got a 5-year sentence, you're going to do a life sentence now because I don't like you. I'm not saying that at all. There are certain conspiracies, there are certain situations where people are indicted in the feds instead of the state because there's been certain things going on for a long time, and the state law wasn't effective enough to prosecute them. And then, federal judges have discretion. Like in my case, they would thought that, we were a gang, and, we've lived lawlessly, especially me. I was out running around doing crazy things, and they had this law where they said, hey, we'll get them on the drugs. And then even if we can't find them guilty on the murder, because there's a lot of evidentiary issues and the attempted murder, we'll just give them up with departure. As a matter of fact, that's what they had proposed to me in my plea agreement. That's how we're going to sentence you to 35 years. And of course, I took it because there was a lot of other factors involved, and we've already been through that. But so, misconceptions about laws, I'm saying people have them. So it's not just cut and dry, and by no means is this an indictment against like law enforcement, against prosecutors, against judges. I mean, I see things from both angles. I can understand. Like if I was a judge, if I was a prosecutor, if I was a police officer, I would see things differently because I would be shaped differently. You know, I just happened to be a person that committed crime my whole life, you know, and I just, that's the way I was, you know, nobody brought me up that way. That's just the way that it happened, you know. So, and I found there was an easy way to make money. And so I seen things differently, you know what I'm saying? However, as I get older, I start to see, you know, my perspective has changed on things. But what I am telling you about is that, you know, no system is perfect, especially the laws of this country. And some people suffer as a result of that. Some people skate. Some people get away scot-free. Some people, you know, they use the laws to their advantage. They're very guilty. They're very culpable. They get out in 2 years. You know, a lot of people had said about my case, like, why was it 35 years? This was your first time in prison, your first time in trouble. So, you know, you could switch that. Like a guy that committed 3 murders that they couldn't prove, murdered another person, got 2 years. This was my first time in the court system. I got 35 years. So you really can't cross-reference them and say, hey, why does this happen to this? Because every case is different, you know. And my case was different as well. And the way that, you know, Jeff Hobart was our prosecutor. And, I mean, all he was doing was he had this stuff at his disposal, and he was a prosecutor. He was an attorney. He wanted to win. I guess everybody has a motive to do what they do. And at the end of the day, every single person involved in a controversy thinks they're right. So really, who is right? You just have to go with the side that you believe in most. And obviously, I believed in my side the most. But right now, looking back on it, just is what it is, whatever the case may be is. But misconceptions about laws, a lot of people have them. And that's just a few of them right there that people had questions about. And, you know, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for following. We will have some guests coming soon. So that's for sure. You won't have to listen to me drone on about the same old thing every day, right? But we're going to have some guests. We're going to have some people that have contacted me, reached out to me and want to be on the podcast. And bigger and better things coming. Thanks for tuning in. Share this stuff. I appreciate it. Keep commenting. I'll answer all your comments and questions. Anything about buying clothes. Where is it on this side? I don't even know where it's at. Yeah, so just leave me a comment. You can DM me on Instagram. You can reach out to me anyway. I have whatever you want, everything in all sizes. If you want to rock the brand, get at me. Have a great one. Take care.